we said we would make it quite short, but there you go. It just came out like that. Hello to all and welcome on Watches TV. And before rolling out our interview coming back on the latest annual report by Morgan Stanley on the state of the watchmaking industry, well, I just wanted to say that initially we thought we would manage to do it in 20 minutes. Well, that didn't really happen since we had so many interesting things to talk about. So not only can you find the full version as a podcast on Spotify and Apple, links below, but we also chaptered the content according to the themes covered by this report. Okay, let's go and hang in there. Today we have the pleasure of having our good friend Oliver Müller from LuxeConsult, co-author of what has become the reference in terms of the state of the industry, a report done with Morgan Stanley. This is already the 6th edition, so we're going to talk about indeed the main tendencies of 2022. Losers, winners, of course, but I mean on the kind of the big picture of the industry. So let's start immediately by indeed talking about the big numbers. 2022 was quite an impressive year.
A record year again, I want to say, and hopefully we will have other record years beyond. Still the same trends. We are seeing a polarization, premiumization, the upper end is performing very well. We have one anomaly, which we probably will talk about later on. An exceptional year. The only negative point, which I'm always bringing up, is the volumes which are not recovering, with 2 exceptions, which we can also mention later on.
Coming back on the numbers that we will find in this report, just to be noted that we're talking the actual turnover on the market of the brands compared to the some other numbers that we have from the Fédération Suisse de l'Horlogerie, which is talking only about kind of the export figures. Here we're talking kind of the consolidated turnover of these brands on the various markets. There are obviously differences between the different markets, and we'll talk about that also. So coming back on the top 10 brands, you mentioned indeed consolidation of some of these big players. Has there been any noticeable moves in this top 10?
Oh yes. Unfortunately for the Swatch group, there are only 2 brands left in the top 10, which are Omega and Longines, and Longines lost 2 ranks, and we're seeing Tissot being kicked out of the top 10. And this is mainly due to the weak performance of the Chinese market, which is the most important market for the Swatch group overall, and especially for Longines and Tissot. So we will probably, hopefully for the 2 brands, see a better performance in 2023, because the Chinese market, as we all know, has restarted, not as strongly as we expected, but it will help mainly the Swatch group to do hopefully a better performance than 2022.
There you're talking about the Chinese market, the internal Chinese market, mainland market. We know that before, Chinese consumers were obviously extremely important regarding all the tourism and associated business generated by that when they were traveling abroad. Traveling for Chinese consumer might pick up again a little bit this year. Do you think this will also have an impact?
I don't think so, because the sales will just move from A to B, or from China to Europe or elsewhere. So it's not additional sales to be expected. We all know that the Chinese government is pushing very hard that the people spend their money at home for obvious reasons. Mm-hmm. They have created duty-free sales regions such as Hainan and others.
Are those performing correctly?
Yes, they're performing. It depends on the brands. The brands which were strong before the lockdowns of COVID are strong again, beyond any questioning. So the Swatch group has the best performing brands in China, but ROLEX is doing well there, and a few other brands. It's just that the market didn't restart as strongly as where it was in 2019 before COVID. So I think the expectations might be a little bit too high. We will see, of course, more Chinese traveling around the world and consuming luxury goods for all sorts of reasons. But I don't think it will add up new sales. It's just that they are done here rather than there.
Coming back on this top 10, can you give us a little bit, can you walk us through a little bit the big players, and let's start immediately with number 1 then.
Number one is Rolex. Beyond there is no surprise there. 9.3 billion sales, which is an extraordinary performance. A market share of 30%, which for me it's the most striking fact. It's that one brand is so dominant on this market and growing still very strongly. Interestingly, the volume grew also a lot. We estimated with Morgan Stanley that the volume grew by about 14%, which is a lot at the level of Rolex.
That is quite significant. How do you explain this? More production capabilities, better logistics? How?
They increased the shifts, so they produce more until more or less October. So it's more or less 2/3 of the year they increased substantially the output, because they have, as we all know, they have to respond to an ever-growing demand. Maybe we'll talk a little bit later about the prices on the secondary market, but they increase quite substantially. And Rolex, are one of the very few main players in volumes, contributing to saving the declining volumes of the Swiss watch industry. The other brand, obviously, is Swatch, with the phenomenal success of the Moon Swatch, which is a very good sign that the Swiss watch brand is still capable of conquering the world with an accessible product. It had a tremendous success. I never expected them to sell as many watches as they did. I was forecasting, when they launched the watch on March 26th last year, that they would maybe
21.
achieve... Yes. That they would achieve 500,000, which for me already was a figure that was very important. And at the end of the day, they achieved 1 million. At least it's what Swatch Group tells us, but I think it's very near the truth. Phenomenal success with old school marketing methods. Yeah. That's the other interesting aspect of that product launch. So Swatch and Rolex contributed to more or less keeping the volumes at the same level. We were only 49,000 to be precise, units more than the year before, which was very low.
Oh yeah. Oh, interesting. But what's interesting, what you're mentioning about Rolex, is that because we hear once in a while, Rolex, they do whatever to, just to play on the demand by lowering the offer and things like that. It's not the case. I mean, they're really doing what they can to increase the production volumes. But of course, I mean, demand is so high that, but it's not a quest of scarcity or whatsoever. I mean, they try to address it. It's a fine balance between the two, but it's not something that, I mean, they are tackling production issues.
They are tackling production issues. They are going to invest, as we know, 1 billion Swiss in a new factory, which is far away from the watch valleys that we know, which is an interesting point, because they are going there because they need the people. The critical path of any manufacturing activities is human being, and those are very difficult to find, the people who are qualified enough to work for a watch manufacturing company. So they are doing what they can. Probably, let's say, they could increase the output on some of their most iconic or trophy or grail watches, however you want to call them, but they do a lot. It's not what certain people are always questioning if they create this artificial scarcity.
I mean, we hear this since years and years and years.
Yes, but the demand is increasing.
Yeah.
I was just telling someone today that I would estimate the real demand on annual demand on Rolex to be probably around 2 million watches. They already produced 1.2, which is a huge increase from where they were 10 years ago. So yes, Rolex unabated, increasing prices, volumes, therefore turnover. They are becoming more and more important. We are also seeing that they want to reduce their retail network. Not saying that they are going to do direct to consumer, but they will reduce the number of POS selling Rolex worldwide, which is an interesting move. They want to concentrate, have bigger shops, a better offer for the clients.
Because we see this with also other brands that have reduced their retailing network.
Patek, Audemarspiguet in the first place. Audemars today has about 100 doors left worldwide, whereas more or less 10 years ago there were 470, which is a substantial reduction, which Patek will probably also perform. And then if we go to the top 10, Cartier. Cartier is a very interesting case because apart that the CEO is doing and his team always, there are lots of people in any brand doing a very good job. So at Cartier, they do an excellent job. The interesting point is that they are refocusing only on icons. We had seen 10, 15 years ago a tendency of Cartier trying to launch new product lines which were not that successill.
And also kind of high-end complicated watches. I mean, they've invested probably tens and tens of million Swiss francs in there. But despite the power of the brand, it never really...
They never achieved, yes, because there was a perceived misfit, so as to say, from the client seeing a brand which they consider a luxury brand, but more related to a dress watch, a sports watch for some of them, but the design watch, rather an icon rather than complicated mechanical complications. So they totally came back, and we published another small report with Morgan Stanley where we were mentioning the number of icons. And if you look at Cartier, they have the oldest one, which is the Santos. They have the Tank in all different variations. So that's a sign which you find through the whole watch industry, is that finally what you keep and what you sell are icons. And very important, people always ask me, what is a product icon? A product becomes an icon. You just can't decide that this is going to be iconic. The Nautilus, the Royal Oak, the Speedmaster, the Reverso from Geographical, they all became iconic because the clients decided that they were iconic. So Cartier still on the second place. Omega, it's performed quite well. You always have to refine the lecture of the figures, because the overall market grew by 11.6% in terms of value, whereas the Swatch Group overall grew only 4.6%, which is not a very good performance, to say the least.
Let's come back in a while, indeed, on the aggregated performance by groups. But let's continue now, kind of brand by brand. And
so Omega, good year, not exceptional. It's one of my love marks because I have worked there, so everybody knows. I think by the time everyone knows, but they could do a lot better. They have iconic products. They have the Seamaster 300 meters. They have the Speedmaster Professional for certain markets, the Constellation. They have a lot of iconic products, They surprise me positively sometimes. Sometimes they do things which I question a little bit more, but I think they still have a tremendous potential. I wish they would do better, and they will probably this year, because China is bouncing back, and that will help also Omega.
And they're not only working on the design or the brand appeal, but also on the technique.
Yes, yeah. That talks to the watch aficionado that I am as well. They are doing great things at chronometry. I always say there are only two brands, I should say three, with Tudor, but there are two brands doing chronometry in a serious way, which is Omega and Rolex. Omega, for very factual reasons, is for me in front because they have this master chronometer. They presented a new way of regulating the spiral, which is called the Spirit, and they increased the precision of the movement. They just started with this. They will convert the other calibers for. So they do a very serious work on a very factual territory, which is, I think, going to become more and more important for many brands.
And just as a little side note to this, I think, I mean, we know that for instance, much smaller brands or in some of those smaller independent outfits that we like, where chronometry is sometimes at the center of what they do, but they only do like a few watches and it's okay. But to achieve mass production with chronometrical performance as they do, I mean, it's something that is really on a higher level. I mean, to be able to reproduce this on an industrial basis is, implicates so much complex thinking and engineering. I think people don't really understand that the fact of being able to replicate this on those numbers is just phenomenal.
It's a very difficult, it's a very interesting product territory, the chronometry, because even though function-wise it doesn't have any meaning anymore, as we all know, but it still demonstrates that you master the manufacturing of precise mechanical timepieces. And
you keep pushing.
And you keep pushing. You keep getting better. And we see that Rolex and Omega are pushing each other towards the better, the more precise, etc. And I find it very interesting. It's a major achievement that those brands are making, because, as you said, making 10 chronometers a year is more or less achievable by a good watchmaker. If you want to make 100,000, 500,000 or even more, then it's a major industrial achievement. Absolutely. So kudos to those two brands and to Tudor, who does also the master chronometer. Then a phenomenal brand, audemarspiguet. Of course, we are talking 2022 figures. So, of course, they took advantage of the 50th anniversary of the Royal Oak. Many special limited editions. Of course, everything sold out immediately. The current CEO, François-Henri Benamias, did an outstanding work the last 10, almost 11 years as the CEO of the brand. We see the results. As he said it many times, there is no magic. There is just common sense, hard work, sticking to a strategy. It will be interesting to see what is left for the new incoming CEO, who should be in place by end of this year. It's always the question, who is it going to be?
Of course.
Not me. So, unfortunately.
Well, actually, maybe not, because that's quite a tough challenge to take.
Yes, it will be quite a challenge. I mean, they just drove past the 2 billion sales. Super achievement.
Well, I remember only a few years ago when they crossed the 1 billion, that they were already very happy. Now, in a matter of a few years, it just doubled. That's it's incredible.
Incredible. In fact, they more than tripled the sales since the Benamias took over as CEO. It's phenomenal. They doubled the EBIT margin. I mean, what can you say that was not done the right way? There are some people criticizing the fact that it's a one product brand. So I say yes, but there are others who I'm not going to name who perform very well with one product. So yes, incredible. I think they will continue on a very strong trend. At least 2023 will be probably another record year for the brand. Then we have Patek. Patek doing an excellent work. They have a totally different approach than Audemars Piguet in terms of retail.
And also in terms of product, because you have a product range that is obviously much wider, even though there are a few watches that are performing better than others. But I mean, they maintain a full collection.
Yes. And if Mr. Stern looks at this video, I'd say kudos, congratulations on the decision of taking out your best-selling piece, the Nautilus 5711. I mean, that is only possible with a family-owned company. Sure. Imagine you're the CEO of Cartier and you go and see Mr. Rupert, the chairman of the group, and you tell him, you know what, Mr. Rupert, we're going to discontinue the whatever, Pasha, Tank, etc. Probably you are fired the second after that. Very daring move by Patek. I think it was a good move. Of course, it frustrated a lot of people who were on waiting lists since years and years. Finally seeing the end of the tunnel, and someone comes and no, there are no more Nautiluses 5711. The prices went through the roof for the last series, which were with the green dial and the Tiffany, which are selling for millions of dollars.
Insane. I mean,
insane.
Insane.
This is the exaggeration of some people speculating on those grail pieces.
But then you also see like Michael Jordan shoes going for $2.5 million. So, you know.
It's not, yes, I agree.
We can
and probably your Nautilus will still be around in 2 or 3 generations. Whereas
I mean, if you wear the sneakers,
I'm
maybe
not that sure.
All right, little parallel aside.
And then we have Richard Mille. This is another phenomena. I love to talk about this brand because when I talk to students, I always bring up this example of how you build a luxury brand with consistency, coherence, a clear strategy, a clear image, both in terms of communication and product. Mr. Mille is a very clever man surrounded by other clever men who set up the one partner is in charge of manufacturing, the others were in charge of distribution. They did.
No, the setup is really smart.
The setup is ultra smart. You like or don't like, I don't like the people criticizing the product because there are very good movements. The style is questionable, but it's you recognize it from 10 meters, and that's what Richard Mille clients are looking for, mainly, probably status, but it's an extraordinary product. They always push the boundaries with new materials, new movements, new complications. So an extraordinary brand.
One threat I would say, one threat I would see with this is that, you know, we've seen obviously over the last couple of years an increase in the kind of people robbing your watch, and you know, and if wearing a timepiece that is as recognizable as Richard Mille, meaning that we know what it's worth, basically. I mean, you're showing off a little bit your wealth there on your wrist.
Average retail price 250,000 Swiss.
Yeah, well then the bar is set pretty high. So if you're starting to feel uncomfortable wearing such pieces, maybe you like it, but you just feel like maybe this is not so safe, I could see this as a little threat. What do you think?
It is an issue. It is an issue that today you can't walk in the street with a Royal Oak from Audemarspiguet, with Richard Mille, with some Rolex, etc. in London, in Paris, even in Geneva. You have to be careful. It is an issue. How to address it, I don't have. There is a very interesting initiative by Audemars Piguet, which is for the time being limited. But they will reimburse you if you get robbed of your watch. That's not a solution. No.
It's a complicated situation, but I see this as
it's a challenge. It's a challenge if we can't wear the watches when and where we want.
I mean, watchmaking should be about pleasure.
Yes.
And then if it's you're thinking, oh my God, I'm making my life complicated by wearing this, then
rather wear a moon swatch. You will probably.
That's a solution. Indeed.
But they are also very sought after, so maybe it's not such a good idea.
All right, let's go back to the numbers.
So the numbers. So we have Longines. Swatch Group again, which came back 2 ranks in the from the top 10. It's now a number 7. IWC, Richemont, they're doing a good job. I think they have quite a tough competition to face, but overall. Good product initiatives, very current brand image through their retail product communication, very current. And this is going to please one man in the world because he just integrated the top 10, and we are very happy for him and his whole team. And that is Breitling at number 10. What can we say? Again, it's like looking at Richard Mille. I talked about currents, consistency, a clear strategy being rolled out, and when I look at the team around Mr. Kern, the CEO of Breitling, I must say it's very consistent what they do, and they get the rewards that they deserve. I think they will continue to grow. There is still some potential there. Now it's getting tougher for them, I think, because for the time being, they haven't really achieved the growth that they would deserve in Asia. And in Asia, they are faced with very tough competition from Omega, Swatch Group, the #1 brand in China, and an important brand on other Asian markets. So that will be interesting to see where Breitling goes. Mr. Kern would, of course, tell us that it's a huge opportunity because he's doing less than 5% of his sales in China, and therefore he can grow a lot. They can grow a lot also with ladies' watches, only 25% of their sales, which is quite low compared with Omega or Cartier. But yes, it's the results, the extraordinary results of Breitling the last few years are the result of current and consistent work.
So, talking about those top 10 brands, what do they represent regarding the overall turnover? Because I think this is quite impressive.
Yes, that's the figure I like to give. So we talked about Rolex 30% market share, and just to be clear, the methodology that we're using with Morgan Stanley is that we convert the sales into retail values, and based on those retail values, we calculate the market share. So everybody is on a comparable basis. So Rolex 30% in front of everyone else. The big four, Rolex, Audemars Piguet, Patek, and Richard Mille, 42% market share. Phenomenal, growing since we have started. It's now, as you said, the 6th editions, growing every year steadily. We have the 5 most important brands which make more than 50% of the turnover, 15 brands making 75% of the whole turnover of Swiss luxury watches, and 25% make more than 90% of the sales. So we always give the number of 350 brands. There are, of course, more than that.
Yeah.
There are around 500 to 600 active Swiss-made brands, but many of them, and I'm not going to use again, hello, my friend who said that I shouldn't use the term marginal, but they are quite marginal. And in fact, we are publishing the first 50. Once you get out of the first 50, the numbers are becoming quite small.
But I mean, all these brands, they do have a positive impact in terms of making the industry as a whole desirable.
Yes.
And so that's, I mean, something
yes,
that
absolutely. You're talking about the small brands,
well, for
the
instance,
independents.
yeah, for instance,
sure,
yeah.
sure. They make the whole industry more interesting with interesting initiatives, products. They keep some traditions which have a tendency to disappear. I'm talking métier d'art, etc., etc. So yes, they have their role
and
to
they
play.
dare also, in terms of design, a few things that are
Yes.
sometimes very interesting.
And I think the new players coming in since 30 years really push the boundaries, because if we now everybody has forgotten, but but we are old enough, at least I am old enough to compare with how Patek or Audemars was perceived in the. Let's go back only to the 1980s. They were, to say the least, not that sexy. And then comes in beginning of the 90s a brand called Frank Muller with a Centrex Curvé pushing everybody around, big numbers on the dials. And then you have a crazy brand beginning of the 2000s, RichardMille, crazy big watch at a crazy price where everybody thought this Mr. Mill, he must be out of his mind to propose a watch at this price, etc. So yes, they helped to push, they helped to regenerate. I think if we wouldn't have had those brands, we wouldn't see Rolex in 2023 presenting that bubbles on the dial.
Most probably, yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, absolutely.
That's the cool thing about that.
Yeah.
Then beyond the top 10, just a few special mentions. We're amazed by the progression of Hermès, of their watches. As you said before, when we were talking, they are beyond the 500 million sales, watches only, which is an incredible achievement.
Incredibly impressive.
Very impressive, due to refocusing on mechanical, on métier d'art, on complicated mechanical pieces. Very current. I'm very much impressed. Last year they achieved again more than 40% growth. Of course, the brand is very strong, and that helps, of course. And my prediction is that there is another very strong luxury brand which has some ambitions, and I think that in the near future we will see Louis Vuitton also catching up. They do very interesting things in the high end of watchmaking.
Extremely creative, yeah.
And special, yes. Who should I mention apart from Swatch, with the phenomenal success of the Moon Swatch? One or two brands, Girard-Perregaux and Ulysse Nardin, which some people wouldn't expect at that level. They have done their homeworks. They still have a lot of work to do, but I'm quite impressed by Girard-Perregaux. The success is mainly due to the Laureato, which is the sport chic trend, and we all know that they probably take advantage of other brands.
Of the shortage of elsewhere.
Of the shortage, of the scarcity.
But the Laureato is a watch that exists also from the same period than the ones that...
1976.
The 70s, exactly. So I mean, it's a brand, it's a watch with a legitimacy, and it's not only maybe filling the void and the scarcity that
Sure,
people would have.
sure.
I mean, it has a...
I wouldn't do what some people do to diminish the success of, let's say, the overseas at Vacheron or the Laureato at Girard-Perregaux by saying it's a substitute, because that's not nice. I always thought that the overseas is an extraordinary watch, very nicely designed. It didn't get the success that it would have deserved in the first place, and that whole trend towards the sport chic helped the overseas and the Laureato and others.
And what we see with the overseas is that, and we'll talk about the second-hand market in a while, but regarding the overseas, the desirability for this watch means that the price, it retains its price.
Yes.
And which is quite a strong indicator of not only being able to fill a void, it has
substance.
It has substance. Yeah,
yes, absolutely. The value retention is there. It's very important for a brand like Vacheron to build up a new momentum with a younger clientele in search of younger products. I'm not saying they should stop the Patrimony, which is also a very nice product line, but the overseas help them to regenerate their clientele. So Vacheron is performing extremely well within the Richemont group.
And I heard that it will pass the billion mark.
That's my prediction.
Well,
yes, that's my prediction. I think that we will have in the near future 1, maybe 2, maybe 3 new members to the Billionaires Club. Would be IWC, Breitling, and Vacheron. Probably IWC before the 2 others. But the 3 have good chances to join that club. Yes.
So I mean, Vacheron has really, increased quite significantly over the last few years.
Yes.
They've done a good job there.
They have done a good job, and they are less dependent on the Chinese markets than they were 10 years ago. Yeah. So that's again.
Yeah, that's true. That was a kind of a major issue for them.
Yes.
A big threat.
They grew too fast, depending on one market, which was China. But that's always, and now I'm becoming a little bit business philosophical, but when you're at the helm of a brand, if you have a market which pushes you so strong, it's difficult to say no. That's why, and again, Mr. Stern, this is a compliment, because I know you don't like me, but I make another compliment. The long-term strategy and the strength to say we don't want to go too fast on one precise market because it's growing fast. And I think this makes the main strength of Patek Philippe is that they always kept that very safe and sound geographical mix on their sales. ROLEX as well. ROLEX are extremely strong in the US, but it's not a strategy per se that they want to grow faster on that market. Just as a side remark, ROLEX has the strongest competition positioning in any for any luxury category in the US. They have more than 40% market share of the luxury watches business in the US. So that's very unique. Even Louis Vuitton or Hermes are not as strong in their own product category, which is quite impressive.
Very impressive, for sure. All right, maybe now let's talk in a summarized way, if possible, on the performance of the groups, if we see them as consolidated turnovers and performance. What can we say about Swatch? You just mentioned a little bit about it, introduced a few things about them. Swatch, LVMH, Richemont, of course. What are the kind of, what can be said about these guys?
Let's start with the not so nice comments, which are about the Swatch Group. Even though they deny it, they underperformance widely because they had, as I said before, plus 4.6 at constant exchange rates, whereas the market grew at 11.6.
And if you take out the Moon Swatch?
If you take out the Moon Swatch, and foremost Omega, because even though we shouldn't say it, Omega contributed 2/3 of the group's growth last year. One brand out of 17, 2/3 of the growth, 1/3 of the sales, almost 2/3 of the EBITDA, so the operating profit margin. So if you look at that, I would be a little bit concerned that I am having too many risks on one brand. But as I said before, Omega still has a huge potential to grow. Longines and Tissot didn't perform well because of the weakness of China, but taken the other way around, maybe they should consider diversifying their sales a little bit more proactively than waiting every time that the Chinese markets get back into business. That would be my advice for free. They are doing quite well with Blancpain. Breguet, unfortunately, is not doing well at all, to my great despair and to the despair of many watch collectors around the world. We would wish they would come back where Mr. Hayek Sr. had left that brand.
Because, I mean, this is a trend, unfortunately, witnessed over the last few years. I mean,
it's an ongoing trend. Yes, you can't deny that the brand has totally lost the momentum, despite having magnificent products, etc. But the product itself doesn't make a brand live. It's all things going around the product which makes the difference. And then you have, it's a mixed bag at Swatch Group, because you have smaller brands, sorry to the CEO of Hamilton, Certina, Mido, etc. They do a good job.
They do a good job.
They do a good job. Absolutely. They do. Those are brands which probably don't bear the potential to become billionaire brands, no. But they do extremely well, between 100 and 150 million sales, which is quite an achievement. Don't get me wrong, but for me, the main problem of Swatch Group is the complexity of managing a group with 17 brands. That's one thing. The other thing is that the chairman, the CEO of the group, is saying that his ultimate goal is to be an industrial group optimizing the machines, not the performance of the brands. And when you read that, you instantly understand that this group is about volumes. Volume is okay. I'm always the one saying we should be careful of not going down and down and down. Again, as a reminder, last year 15.8 million watches exported, more or less the same on the sales overall, etc., which is half what we did 20 years ago. So it's not good.
No.
But pushing everything on the volume is also a problem. And the problem of the Swatch Group is that they have a magnificent, a very powerful industrial structure, but probably the overall size is too big towards the output that they can achieve with their own brands.
Well, especially that now they're not selling anymore to the others, or much less, let's say. So I mean, you have overcapacity somewhere.
They have overcapacities. I would say that Mr. Hayek and his family deserves a great thank you from the rest of the watch industry, because they maintain a lot of industrial capacities for the Swiss watch industry. But at the end of the day, you have to look at the performance of your group. And if you look at the whole Swatch Group, 17 brands, they do less than Rolex, one brand, 9.3 billion. If you add up Rolex and Tudor, you're almost at 10 billion. 10.5 is the turnover of Gucci, a mega luxury brand, multi-product, etc. Here you have one product. So yes, Swatch Group, not so good. We wish they do better this year. Omega did a good job. Swatch did an extraordinary job with the Moon Swatch. Let's not forget about that.
But just a side note on the Moon Swatch, I mean, it's probably going to be complicated to replicate such a success. I mean, That was a fantastic coup. Now we see, for instance, when they just launched this revival with the golden hand. I mean, everybody was.
But it still works.
Yeah.
It still works. I saw the queue in front of the Swatch store. It will be limited quantities because they produce it only when it's full moon, which is an excellent marketing idea. Old school, but it still works. So yes, let's see what they can do as other collabs within the group or outside the group with other watch icons.
We all
there
have
is
always
ideas, this rumor that they might do the 50 Fathoms of Blancpain as with Swatch in bioceramic. We'll see. But I agree with you. The success of one product line is not the revival of the whole brand, and the brand has consistently lost momentum. It's not all their fault. It's also the trend of smartwatches. I always like to show that chart where you see the smartwatches coming up, 5 million sold, 28 million Swiss watches sold. That was 2014, not 1977. That was 2014. Then you see 2015, Apple coming up with the Apple Watch, and then it goes up. With Apple has about almost 1/3 market share of the smartwatches. So they did last year about 2.7 times the volume of the whole Swiss watch industry, 16 million, more than 40 million watches sold. So you instantly understand that this has had an impact on the entry level on the quartz watches.
Sure. So let's.
That was Swatch.
That was Swatch, right?
Richemont. Richemont, again, a little bit a mixed bag. Vacheronconstantin, Lange und Söhne, which is one of my love marks, not because of the CEO, because of their products and history. Extraordinary brand, growing. It's not very big, it's not substantial in terms of sales volumes, but it's a nice success story, Vacheron-Constantin.
And regarding Lange, I mean, we see really clearly an evolution of the perception of the brand.
Yes.
I mean, it's before it was known by the connoisseurs and aficionados and things like that, respected for this reason, but now it has widened the level of appreciation significantly, I think.
Yes. And we are seeing also the prices on the secondary market holding very strongly. It's one of the brands with the best value retention, apart from again, ROLEX, AUDEMARSPIGUET, Patek. But Lange is doing very good. Very consistent strategy. They are very smart at keeping the scarcity on the markets. A lot of know-how. Yes.
But overall, Richemont is not.
Richemont, the specialty watchmakers, didn't perform as they did in 2021.
How do you explain this?
They have issues at different brands. For instance, and you are now thinking that today every brand I mention is a love mark, but this one is another really love mark that I carry with me. It's Geographical. They do, I think the whole team and their CEO, they do an extraordinary work. They deploy new initiatives to invite people at the manufacturer. They have a collection going around the world. They do all kind of stuff, producing videos which are very well done, etc. But somehow you feel that the momentum is lost. It's not that the brand is losing, but it's not gaining.
Well, when I see around me, just talking with my watch buddies or whatsoever, unfortunately, that name just simply never pops up.
Yes, it never pops up, exactly. It's almost as if the brand got lost somewhere in translation. I don't know. I'm not unlike some other people. I don't have the genius idea and would go to the CEO and say, hey, you have to change only this and that. And no, the Reverso is a product icon overall in the watch industry. They have done about anything that you could think of doing in colors, in mechanical complications. They do every year extraordinary things. It's just that it's not a round watch, as stupid as it may sound, so it's a little bit more difficult to sell. It's a very nice dress watch.
I mean, the market has been significantly pulled by sports watches, let's say, over the last few years. And
yes,
that has a big impact, and
yes,
solely in the elegant type of watches.
Maybe one advice to the CEO, I think their master line is very nice. At least I'm a big fan, big fan. Hello, Alex, who made fun of me because I said that the chronograph annual calendar was probably one of the nicest pieces I had seen since a long time, and I'm very critical. Very nice piece. Total anti-commercial, because you have to sell it at quite a high value because it's a complicated movement. It lacks I love the style, don't get me wrong, and I'm not here to criticize the product director, but I love the style, but it lacks maybe a little bit of sexiness. Maybe they should try what Zenith tried the last few years, and they are doing an excellent job bringing colors, maybe a little bit altering the shape of the case. I don't know, something, you know, the small 1% which will make the whole difference. So Geographical for me is one brand I would love to see getting back to the momentum that they had, but they are doing a lot of things to get back there.
But still worrying times a little bit for them, unfortunately.
Yes, still complicated, not in a very positive dynamic. Recently, who else do we have? We have Montblanc, we haven't spoken about. They are doing well. I think I should be nice because I know the CEO and he does a good job, and the CEO of the brand as well. I'm not a huge fan because it's not a watch brand per se, even though with those magnificent Minerva chronograph movements, they have some assets. Was it a wise step to put Minerva in Montblanc? I don't know. I wouldn't have done it. And then we have Panerai, a brand icon. I don't know how much further they can develop the brand.
Yeah.
The CEO would probably tell us that the sky is the limit. I'm not so sure. I don't know. I was not, at the recent Watches and Wonders, I was not taken away by the novelties that I have seen, to put it politely. Yeah. Sorry, the guys at
we
Panerai.
like subjectivity, so that's fine.
Yes, we express opinions. It's only my personal opinion, but still, it's a nice brand, unique history linked to combat divers. They still, I think, they can develop their storytelling. Yeah. Maybe they are a little bit too restrained on that.
But it's a brand that had so much momentum with its community. You know, it was incredible at one point, thing like that. And I feel that this also they kind of lost it a little bit by playing other games. You know, it's maybe now they try to regain it by coming back on some historical models also. But I mean, maybe it's, I don't know. I'm not saying it's too late, but I mean it's indeed, as you mentioned, maybe it has reached a little bit its glass ceiling.
Yes, well, I think so. I would love to be proven wrong, as always, when I say. And then we have Baume & Mercier, which I wish one day will regain the position where they were 20 or 25 years ago. Going to be difficult. It's
what's sad, you know what, is that I think you, me, and other people, we've been saying this for the last 15 years.
Yes.
So
it's but you know, it's again, it's a lack probably of consistency in the product strategy. The CEO changed and rechanged, and you know, every new incoming CEO, he wants to show that he's the new CEO. So he will probably change the strategy, and then it becomes a little bit difficult to follow. I don't know, and probably it's also not fitting so well with the group's company culture at Richemont, which is very much into luxury. Probably Baume & Mercier would do a lot better at Swatch Group, but they have already those 17 brands.
That's true.
So we are not going to add up one
Absolutely.
more.
But coming back on what you're just saying, indeed, I mean, for instance, for me, one mistake, and probably linked with the fact of being part of this luxury group, is that, I mean, I don't think we needed Baume & Mercier tourbillon minute repeater and thing like that, you know. With this, I mean, you lose a lot of energy. I understand that it's nice as a CEO to have one watch like this in your collection, but is it worth all the trouble getting it and the understanding of then your customers? I mean, it dilutes a little bit things, I think. But
I fully agree. Same page. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, we wish them all the best. But complicated for sure. And like we said, it's been complicated for a little while. Van Cleef & Arpels still doing pretty strong.
Very clear positioning on poetical complications. They do wonderful things. I'm always in admiration when I see a new complication, a new watch. It's extraordinary what they do. Yes, I'm full of praise, and they do quite well. Yes, both jewelry and watches. I don't know exactly which one performs better than the other, but overall, again, it's a wonderful brand with a unique history. Richemont is very lucky to have Cartier and Van Cleef in their portfolio.
Yeah, no, absolutely.
That's why the rumors came up that LVMH might be interesting.
Which is the perfect transition to talk about LVMH. I mean, you mentioned a few things about Zenith before, but indeed, so the rumor I mean, we talked about it on a prime time, is that there has been, so it seems, little talks here and there, or an envy of a little, the possibility of LVMH and Richemont not necessarily merging, but I mean, the kind of an acquisition could have been in the air. We'll talk about that, or maybe not in the next
maybe
month.
not.
Maybe not, but not
at least
sure.
not from my side.
No, but it's those were the rumors. So, so let's talk about LVMH quickly.
Best performing brand, Hublot.
Yeah, has been
Hublot. Interesting. I'm not maybe their biggest fan overall, but they do a very, very interesting job with collaborations with the Japanese artist, with the flower. I forgot the name.
Sorry about that.
Sorry. Very interesting product initiatives. They are doing quite well. I think they are filling a gap between the Omegas and Rolexes and Audemars Piguet. They are doing that in a quite clever way. Sorry. Yes,
yeah, what's interesting is that they are quite antagonizing. I mean, they have a lot of haters, let's say, to this. Let's say that. It's unbelievable the number of people just kind of don't appreciate and are pretty vocal about it. You know, this is.
But I don't.
At the same time,
I don't understand why, because they deserve a lot of credit, because they have built up a movement manufacturer. They do their own movements.
And they're doubling their capacity.
Yes.
Also.
Yes. And the CEO. Who used to be a friend a long time ago, does a very good job on the product. He's very good on that. He used to work at Blancpain with Mr. Beaver a long time ago. So no, you can like or dislike, hating.
Yeah.
Hey guys, don't hate brands. They everyone deserves to get a little bit of credit.
And they fit a purpose.
They fit a
and
purpose.
the numbers prove it, because they're still selling quite a lot. I mean, if there was really an issue, I mean, numbers would go down. And on top of that, I mean, that on the resale value, Hublot has never been a very strong player on that field, but it doesn't have that much of an impact on the actual business of the company.
No, exactly. We'll see. It's interesting to see also the evolution of the brand on a very long time frame. So I see what they have achieved since Mr. Beaver and Mr. Guadalupe took over the brand, and it's it's an extraordinary achievement. That says it all. Tag Heuer.
Yeah.
Tag for me is a complicated brand. Why? Because, and I'm going to be very careful about what I'm going to say, but I wrote an article a few years ago after I was invited at a collector's event at Tag Heuer. Tag doesn't have the historical substance that a brand like Omega has, nor the horological strength that I'm talking about Omega, because it's a direct competitor with Breitling and others. It's a complicated brand, but they have also their strengths. The strength is they have two iconic products, the Monaco and the Carrera. They are doing good things with both of those, and they have understood that they should put more efforts in those two product lines, because it helps them to reconnect with the younger generation, younger demographics, who are the new buyers. So they are doing a good job there. And the smartwatches, I don't understand. I know that the actual CEO is very much interested by this. I can't judge because I'm not seeing their numbers. I can only estimate their numbers. I don't think they will ever grow it to a substantial business, because there is not the potential there, because they are at a price level which is substantially higher than an Apple Watch, which is not a watch by the way. But Apple is delivering such an extraordinary job on the whole ecosystem around the product, because that's what makes the difference. The success of the Apple Watch is not the watch, it's Apple. And Tag Heuer is putting a lot of efforts with their smartwatches with, I think, very low results. Apart from that, they still have potential. They have this dual brand with the Tag and the Heuer. So the innovative avant-garde and Heuer, the history of the caliber 11, the chronographs, etc. I think they could do more with that.
Because it is a brand, I mean, historically, I think that has benefited from a lot of, I would say, sympathy. It's a brand that is being appreciated by many people for a very long time. It's part of this kind of small club of brands that has this, this intrinsic power.
Absolutely.
So there is something that you can work on.
You talked about the Paneristi before, and that extraordinary community that Panerai, as you said, is maybe not managing as well as they did at the beginning. And Tag Heuer has this community as well. I discovered that when I went to that collector's event, and I was quite surprised, in fact. And I knew Mr. Beaver, who was then in charge of Tag Heuer, was pushing this to help to elevate the whole brand. I'm quite confident that they have everything it takes to bounce back. They just have to take the good product and communication initiative.
It's for sure that they're indeed, we can see it clearly, they're refocusing a little bit more on the younger generation.
Yes.
And this more of a entry level type of luxury product that you can buy.
Yes, and then there are
doesn't mean that it's cheap, but I mean for as your first watch, but it's
still a substantial amount for a young professional. Still a substantial amount of money. They have this collaboration with Porsche, which again allows you to position your storytelling with racing car driving and the vintage cars of the first 911s, etc., etc. So that helps them again to connect with this community of younger people. And last but not least, I know I still have one beyond, but the Louis Vuitton watches. Very interesting to see what they have done in the high end with the automatons that they have presented, the Jacquemart. Extraordinary products, really incredible. With La Fabrique du Temps, whom I know very well because once upon a time we worked together at Laurent Ferrier, so a lot of know-how in watchmaking, a lot of ideas of creativity. And I'm pretty sure that Louis Vuitton, being the number one in the luxury business overall, will have more ambitions with the Louis Vuitton watches than what we have seen so far.
Yeah, I'm utterly convinced by that too, yeah.
Yes.
I mean, when you talk about the Jacquemart, I mean, obviously those are really high-end. Those are more like kind of talking pieces in a certain way.
Yes.
But you see, we talk about them, and we've talked about them many times on this channel. But indeed, coming back on maybe more entry level again, timepieces benefiting from the power of the brands. The distribution network?
In the current collection, there is exactly the same issue that Hermès had a few years ago. So there is a misfit between those quartz watches that Louis Vuitton still does. They do quite a substantial quantity of smart watches as well. But here I have a little bit a different opinion than with Tag Heuer.
Me too.
There is a misfit. The misfit is that you have a luxury brand up there that everyone, almost everyone, sees as a desirable luxury brand, and then you have those watches with the quartz movements, obviously at lower price ranges. I think that's a misfit with the overall brand strategy, and I'm quite confident that with Mr. Arnaud Son being in charge of the Louis Vuitton watch business, that they will change that in a near future, and that they will reposition the whole product offering a lot higher. The smartwatches at Louis Vuitton are a good choice. It's not very important, I think, in terms of sales, but still, it's connected to traveling, so you can bring up...
There is a link.
Yeah. There is a link. Yeah. There is something which you can tell about. Whereas at Tag Heuer, you know, the watches, the golfing watches who do less than a competing South Korean product, you know, that's complicated. So I think at Louis Vuitton, we will see a lot of new things, positive push. And Zenith,
so we
dear CEO of Zenith, I appreciate a lot the work you're doing, unlike what you might think. You have regenerated the brand. You have done a tremendous amount of work. You have developed initiatives like the icons, which are vintage pieces that are sold by the brand itself after being controlled, refurbished, etc. So I would strongly advise any Zenith collector to buy your icons, because at least you know that it's not a Franken watch. Very interesting product initiatives. It will take, I think, quite some time still to regain the momentum. And then, unfortunately for you, all the people in the watch community have expectations towards Zenith, which are maybe a little bit above what is realistic. And that is your challenge, is that people are expecting a lot from you. And
but despite that, I mean, if we compare what Zenith is doing and how it's performing today compared to 5 or 10 years ago, I mean,
I fully agree. Fantastic. Kudos to you, Julien Tornard. It's you do and you and your team, you're doing a very, very good work. It will pay off, I think. I wouldn't expect Zenith to become a billionaire brand, but I think there is still a lot of potential.
Okay, so this is kind of a wrap, maybe on the group. So
Richemont,
LVMH.
LVMH.
Do you want to talk about anybody else, or is it
no? I
good
think
over there? Good. So let's talk briefly on the kind of the geographical performances of the different territories. What can you say about this?
Yes, very difficult year for China. That was expected with the COVID lockdowns. The rebound, though, at the beginning, right at the beginning, was quite strong.
Yes.
And now it seems to flatten because we are getting back to business as usual.
But do you interpret that as there is less appeal for watches, or people are just kind of, saving their money?
No, I don't think that they're saving their money for luxury goods. I
so
think
it's more profound than that.
I think that the market is becoming more mature, and that we won't see again the boom that we had seen during 10 years.
Okay.
There is, of course, any watch CEO is telling you how many new millionaires every year in China, how many new millions of middle class, and then etc. etc. I'm not a fan of those theories. I rather believe that the market is becoming more mature, that the consumers are becoming more discerning, that they look more critically at brands and their products, and that it's become more complicated in a very competitive market where you have strong brands. Again, Swatch Group was they were the first ones in China in the new time in the 90s. And they have a very strong competitive edge on anyone else, maybe except Rolex, who is also performing very well. So it's difficult to find your space in there. Of course, there are millions of potential buyers, huge market, young market, so they are very well responding to new initiatives, new shops, new way of interacting with the consumer. It's one of the most dynamic market in terms of e-commerce and e-channels overall.
Yeah.
So they are very
quite in advance there.
Yeah, they respond very well to initiatives. So you need to deploy a lot of energy on communicating the brand's image. Maybe the brands didn't get that in the first. Some of the brands didn't get that in the first place, and they thought they could grow through conventional channels. And now most of them, all of them, have understood that you need to do WeChat, etc., and blah 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 blah, and that you have to develop digital initiatives to send out the messages that you want to be well perceived by a young clientele. And again, they are learning. They have a learning curve, which is very fast, very steep. So they have caught up a lot. So it's not anymore the China that was 20 years ago.
Or let's say maybe 5 years ago.
Or maybe even before COVID.
Yeah.
And COVID, I think, brought the market back a little bit. People had more time to consider how and when they would spend their money, but nevertheless, it's still it's a huge market. Then we have the US, which
the rest of Asia. I mean, what can be said? I mean, because we know that Asia is a very important region of the world.
We always talk about China, and we forget South Korea, which is one of the most important luxury markets overall in the world. It's doing well, but the difficulty for a global brand is to be agile enough to adapt the strategy for each market. And as I just said, South Korea is quite different from China in terms of consumers, maturity, etc. Even though the Chinese have caught up a lot and fast, they are still way behind South Korea. So South Korea, important market, growing with its own rules. Japan, they have a demographic problem, as we all know, aging population, still a huge market, still 130 million people on that island.
And a connoisseur market.
And a connoisseur market. It's probably one of the most challenging markets in the world for especially for, let's talk about the independents. If you go there, it's a different planet. You have people asking you questions that you would never have thought of in the first place. And it's sorry, it's a very challenging market because they have retail structures which date back from very long time ago. So you have multiple layers of agents and distributors and then finally retailers and then finally by coincidence a client. So it's difficult to navigate there, but it's still a tremendous potential. We have Taiwan. Many people don't know that. Very wealthy collectors, watch collectors, and art collectors as well, interested, very much centered on Taipei. Also potentially interesting. I'm not allowed to say that it's another country than the one a little bit up north, but it's for the time being at least a different market. Hong Kong, totally, they lost their momentum during the COVID. Carson Chan, if you listen to these videos, if you watch this video, I'm sorry, I'm going to not to agree with you. I don't think Hong Kong will ever make it back where they were before COVID. There is not anymore the momentum of the traveling Chinese from mainland, because now they can buy in Hainan and where else. So it lost a lot of its importance. It's still important in terms of a logistical hub, because we know that many importations are done through Hong Kong and then redistributed all over
and for instance,
Asia.
On the second-hand market, and especially the auction world, Hong Kong is still a very important point.
Yes.
I mean, so it still exists on the map for sure. I mean, it's not
very
done.
strong collectors community. I would advise any independent watchmaker to put that on the map. You have to go to Taipei, to Singapore, to Hong Kong, and to many other cities. Sorry for the ones I'm forgetting. But it's definitely a place where you have a strong watch collectors community. Yeah.
All right, let's
very
change.
dynamic.
Yeah, absolutely.
Now the US.
Yeah, let's change continents.
Yeah, US. Most important market in the world for the last 2 years or 3 years, even if I remember right. Growing very strong. Now we have lost a little bit of momentum for the reasons we know, geopolitical, economical, etc. So it had lost a little bit of that positive momentum. Still a very dynamic market. The huge challenge there is that it's one market but many different markets. So you can't apply just one strategy on the US market, but at the same time, if you want to achieve some brand awareness, you need time and huge financial means, or if you're a small independent brand, you can navigate between the different watch collectors communities. So it's a challenging market.
Well, especially when you have one brand that is taking 40% of that market.
Difficult to find your space there.
And in a nutshell, what about Europe?
Europe, we had UK until recently, which was always one of the best performing markets, mainly, but not only due to London and all the people from all over the world traveling through, living there, etc. So a very dynamic market, very knowledgeable. Still, even though Brexit has complicated things, etc., still an important market. What other markets can we talk about? The interesting part that I would bring up is the change that came through the COVID lockdowns, is that the brands all rediscovered that they had local clients. Yeah. Imagine that. We had all forgotten, including me, that in Germany you have Germans buying watches, not only Chinese getting out of a plane into a car and being brought to the huge shop, etc. So you have local buyers. That's for me the most important evolution in recent years. So the European markets regained in importance seen from the brands.
But that's a sound thing. I mean, it's
yes, totally. It's totally sound. Yes, of course. Because before we had totally forgotten that we had Italy, we had Spain, Portugal, France. Those are all important markets at different level. We know that at Place Vendôme in Paris, the shops wouldn't be that big probably if they hadn't all the tourists.
Of course.
But there are shops in Lyon, in Marseille, etc., etc. So that's for me an important point. I still think that we can do better by going more local. And then everybody now is talking about India.
Yeah, I was going there also. Yeah, tell us.
I don't share. I have a friend doing watch distribution there since many years, so he knows the market very well. I traveled once with him through most of the country. I was amazed. It's a very interesting experience. I'm not sharing the enthusiasm that some brands have on India. I don't think it's the next China. Forget about it. They have totally different buying patterns. They buy luxury, of course. They buy luxury cars, watches, etc. But they don't have that repeat buying pattern that the Chinese have, for instance. Sorry for being generalistic on the Chinese, the Indians, etc. But I just want to talk in terms of the macro environment and talk a little bit about the patterns. But I don't see. I think it will grow. It's becoming a bigger market, more important market. In recent years, they had reduced the import duties, so
because they were super high.
So
there was no point for an Indian to buy a watch over there.
He would buy in Dubai or wherever he would travel around the world. So, but I'm not seeing it as the next China. Probably it will become more important. It will grow only towards the size of the population and how fast Indians are becoming millionaires, etc., etc. But I don't see it as the market.
I have to say that
yes.
Indian viewership on Watches TV is actually quite strong, and so it shows and has evolved, which proves in a certain way that the level of interest regarding watchmaking, at least, is increasing. If that will transform into actual business, I don't know. But in terms of interest, at least, I see that there are indeed more and more.
That's good news.
Yeah, you see?
That's good news. Because developing a market goes always along with developing the knowledge, the awareness towards a certain type of product and brands. That's for sure. And the big challenge, you could set up a branch there, because the big challenge still is to find the right media channels. It's a huge country. Everyone more or less talks English, but you still have to cope with different religions, etc. So, but it's a very dynamic country. But again, I would love that you prove me wrong in 5 years down the road, and that you say, you see, now they're bigger than China. I don't think so.
Yeah, well, time will tell, but I mean, it's at least it represents an opportunity for the industry.
Yes, There are many other opportunities. I think there are some countries in Africa which
I was going to mention,
prove,
indeed, Africa
yes.
is also kind of growing a little bit. I mean,
Yes.
I mean the internal resale, I mean the retailing of watches.
Yes.
Before it was only like a few people that were kind of more agents than
True.
proper retailers, but now this is also evolving a little bit.
Yeah, it's evolving. There are some countries achieving more wealth. So by collateral, there will be more spending on luxury goods. In the Middle East, we are seeing Saudi Arabia going a lot more modern, investing in new retail activities, etc. There, I think we will see also some substantial growth. We have Dubai, but Dubai is rather, how shall I say, it's rather an opportunistic market, getting the shares of currently having a lot of Russians
Yes.
there, spending a lot of money on luxury goods. So for me, it's more important to see how a market evolves in terms of intrinsic strength rather than the opportunity of having the Russians temporarily there.
Talking about evolution then, what can we say about 2023? Because there has always, I mean, 22, as we mentioned, was a record year. It has a nice trend compared to 2021. We've just came out of those big fairs here in Geneva. Everybody was smiling. The energy was good. Most people said business was pretty nice. But at the same time, and without being too pessimistic, I mean, there are a few dark clouds out there, and there are a few people of the industry that are already kind of, saying, be prepared, be a little bit careful. What are your thoughts on this?
We are, for the first 2 months, at least on the exports, we're still on a very positive trend, almost at plus 11% in terms of value and even almost 5% in volume, which is even good. More positive.
Yes.
And again, it's mainly the Moon Swatch pushing the positive side of the volumes. I think we will see a very challenging year. I'm not ultra positive. I think that we don't have to be afraid for ROLEX, Patek, Audemars.
So coming back to those top 10 for these guys.
I think they are on such a strong besides that, it's just pure math. It's that when you have that many backlogs, until you have already delivered those backlogs, you're already at the end of the year and you achieved another record year by coincidence. So that's not you don't need to be a rocket scientist to understand that. I'm a little bit more concerned with the in-between brands who are doing some volumes, but not that much, and somewhere in between. The independents with niche positionings, I'm not afraid at all. As we said before, even if the demand would go back by 50%, they still have years and years in front of them. I think things are going back to a little bit more normal, which would be positive. I don't think we will see the market crashing. I had made a forecast a few months ago expecting that the primary market, the new watches, would grow between 3 and 4% in 2023, based on a record year 2022. So still very positive, but I don't think we will maintain the same momentum that we had seen recently.
But the fact that, for instance, what we mentioned before, the fact that brands like Rolex and Patek are probably going to diminish a little bit, decrease the number of retailing options. I mean, obviously for those retailers it's going to be a painful moment for sure, but it gives them an opportunity to maybe stack up other brands that they weren't necessarily considering now.
Yes, but
he seemed convinced.
Yes, but still, you don't replace Rolex or Patek.
Of course not. But I mean, you're not going to just put the key under the floor and say goodbye. I mean,
no, probably not. If you're in the business for decades or generations, you're not going to quit the business because you just lost
80% of your revenue.
Yeah, that's. I wouldn't like to be in the position where Rolex or Patek walks up and tells you that unfortunately you will have to look for other brands. So that will be challenging for them, but it's going to create new opportunities for a lot of other brands. You know, I doubt a little bit on the capacities of some brands, even though they got those opportunities to grow, because it needs a lot more than just doors. Mm-hmm. It's not the fact that you're exhibited somewhere with a retailer that makes you sell. Yeah. It's the whole thing around it, what you create as a buzz, as sexiness with your products, as interest, as brand awareness. There are many people talking about Norcane. I mean, it's quite impressive what they achieved in a few years, 10,000 watches, at least what they say, per year. That's quite an impressive achievement. At another level, because it's a few hundred watches, Chapek. This is a very nice product. But again, I'm questioning what their potential is in the long run, and if they are going to succeed to, I hope it's not a tsunami, but it's going to be a downwards trend for sure in the near future. We have seen the secondary market not crashing, but going down quite steeply from March 2022 on. We have seen prices on the Rolex Daytona going down by 40% and more.
Yeah, but because it went
too high. Yes,
you know,
but the question I'm asking myself is the growth substantial for so many high-end brands? Yeah. Because almost everyone tries to push up the price ladder, and is there space for so many different brands up there? That's what I'm questioning, and I think the answer is no. I'm not as radical as, for instance, Mr. Kern at Breitling, because he said a few times that there are only, in the long run, 10 brands which will be substantial brands. Of course, Breitling being part of the 10.
How surprising.
We had figured out, but I'm not that radical. I think that there will be 20, 30 brands making the cut, with, of course, our champions in front. It's beyond any questioning. But a lot of brands, I don't see where they fit in when the market gets tighter, because you have competition from strong brands from the Swatch group who can, you know, muscle up when they need to muscle up, etc. So that's the fact I'm questioning. Maybe I'm wrong again, and again I would love to be proven wrong, but it will become tougher. Well, 2022 was an exceptional year.
I mean, if you didn't perform in 2022, I mean, it's like maybe
I would rather agree. Yes.
Yeah. But if we do a little parallel with the car industry, I mean, 50 years ago, there were just in Europe alone, there were like 400 brands, and see what the car industry is left today. But at the same time, you have space for the niche little manufacturers that come up with exceptional products. But in the middle, of course, it's kind of, most of them have disappeared.
That's an excellent point you're bringing up, and cosmetics is exactly the same, food is exactly the same. A lot of brands disappeared. I used to work once upon a time in a small company called L'Oréal, and I saw how many brands disappeared that they had bought or they had in their portfolio, so they concentrated on a fewer brands. And the watch industry is total anomaly by many parameters. Privately owned brands perform better than brands owned by listed companies. Which is total not normal, so as to say, compared with any other luxury segment. I think there will be lesser brands, definitely. Then there is the issue of manufacturing, because today, in the car industry, if you look at how they work, most of the brands are assembly brands. Yes. They don't produce themselves. I'm not going to name brands, but You know, when you have a very expensive sports car, many people don't know that the doors of the car are manufactured at the same place as a much lower position brand. And for the time being, we are not seeing this in the watch industry. And everyone thinks somewhere there will be someone producing the parts for me. Problem is decreasing volumes, decreasing production capacities, decreasing R&D, not for Rolex, Richemont, Swatch Group in the first place, etc., audemarspiguet, Patek, etc. But all the others, where are they going to buy their parts? And even with very small brands, at the end of the day, you need that special screw, you need that special thing which that producer makes, but that producer doesn't have the volume anymore. You have to take in account that the Swatch Group accounts for more or less 2022, 70% of the whole volume of the Swiss watch industry. That's a very strong concentration. Now we have to figure out the guy who is making the cases, the bracelets, the straps, the thing, the dan, the dim. He needs some volume somewhere to be profitable. And when I see people telling me, but you know, we bought a machine to do this and that. Okay, machine is one thing. Now you need the people.
You need the people. It's
and
always
then you
a question
compete
about people.
with Rolex, Audemars, Swatch Group, Richemont. Good luck.
Yeah. Well, I mean, we've always been a very strong and supporter of this network of suppliers of this industry. I mean, it's with all their specialization and so forth. Indeed, you mentioned the car industry. It also works like that. I mean, we were at Bugatti, did a really cool report there, and they opened us their door. And they not only did they show us that it was only an assembly place, but they said that, I mean, they don't build anything. I mean, they all get things shipped from all over the place, and doesn't question yourself of, well, if I'm buying a Bugatti, I'm still buying a supercar, you know. So
that's the point. You brought it on the point. It's exactly that. For some strange reasons, we developed that term of manufacture, which never existed in the beginning.
Well, manufacturer means you were an engine producer.
They were engine producer, dial producer, hands producer, case producers, etc. And at the end of the value chain, you had people which we would call today a brand, and those were assembling, selling, etc., etc. So yes, it probably needs some cultural change to understand that not everyone can produce whatever he wants to from A to Z, that he will probably have to rely on a bigger manufacturing capacity delivering him the parts that he needs.
Yeah. Well, we're still wishing the very best to the industry, of course, for 2023. We don't want to spill out bad vibes for this, and hope it continues to go in a favorable way. Well, I mean, we still continue to love, obviously, watches and watchmakers and all the people behind them. It's important for Switzerland. It's not only, I mean, it's an important business, of course. I mean, it's not the biggest business of Switzerland in a certain way. It's still quite small, but it represents a lot for this country. I mean,
still 60,000 people, 5% of the gross product of the country, 4 or 5th, it depends on how you look at it, exporting industry, etc., etc. So no, it's still important.
It has also been, in terms of image, it has extremely
it's a very positive image
for the rest of the Swiss industry.
I think better than the banks.
Yeah.
So, sorry to the bankers.
Yeah, we've proven some nice things over the last few months there. Anyhow, well, thank you very much, Olivier, for dropping by. It was a nice discussion. We said we would make it quite short, but there you go. It just came out like that. So thanks for being with us throughout this show, and we fully understand if you make it like 10 minutes here, 10 minutes another day, and so forth. But anyhow, thanks a lot for being with us. See you soon, and Viva Watchmaking!
Viva Watchmaking!